I see people talking about regulations, zoning, all that stuff when it comes to housing, but the real problem that people are missing is the capitalistic mindset that was instilled in us from TV shows, movies, American media about normalcy in terms of moving out and housing. So, at replacement rate, you have a family. They live in a house. And one house would occupy these three people, right? So, kid moves out, grows up, and marries a woman from a different household. Now, if they move out, then what happens here is they get a new house, and these parents, like, what happens to their house, Because now you have two generations, because there's the man and the woman, and now that both their houses are going to be unoccupied when the parents eventually die, right? We have this sort of like mess where it's like, well, for a temporary while you needed three houses, and now we have this house. Do most people move back into their homes? I don't know. Like, we aren't that far along inside the history of North America to like know the kind of stuff, right? Like, I don't know people who grew up in this capitalistic society where you're expected to move out, and I don't know like what happens after so many generations of this, because it's like if you don't move out, if you don't move back in, like these houses just get demolished, right? Because like you can't live in them forever, and the reason this is a problem is because it creates all this housing demand when in the past the solution was much more simple. You wouldn't just take the kids out of the house. Instead, what would happen was a sort of transfer. And I feel like this is the way society needs to go again, where you have the male and the female, and they're in their separate homes, right? Now, this is assuming you don't have replacement rates. So, like, just for the sake of it, let's assume you have replacement rate instead. So, like, now you have one son, one daughter, 50-50 on average. And let's just say that, let me put this in a more convenient place. Let's say that these families, what they'll do is when they get married, you have the female move over to the male's house, like you just do a swap, and then the family who's has the male heir will give a dowry over to the female family. That way, just in the case where there is no son to take care of the parents, the dowry can at least ensure that they have some financial future they can invest into. So they buy like the S&P 500 or something. And this is a much more sustainable way to approach the housing crisis, because you don't need to make these temporary homes that, like, what are you going to do when the population rate drops or the population rate gets replaced? It doesn't make sense for like people to be buying new homes. They can just use the homes they already have and then adopt the other member of the marriage into their family and then pay a dowry over to that other family so that they're not losing out on the child pretty much. Anyways, I think that this is pretty obvious, so I'm not sure why no one's talking about it, but I feel like this is probably the most sane solution to the housing crisis.